I'd like now to introduce our CEO, Geraldine Walsh of Dublin Civic Trust.
I'm not going to keep you too long. I just want to say a particular thanks to Mr. Deegan. We really appreciate you being with us tonight. Thank you for such kind words and for such understanding. And I know, just like we said about United Live, we have a shared interest as our minister. And we, as people, we're really trying to make a better city. Because since we started it 20 years ago, and the quite extraordinary thing is we started the trust in the midst of a recession. And I remember Brenda Donoghue was the Secretary of the Department at the time, and Minister Smith very kindly made a deal with a lump sum, out of which things were so bad in 1992 that New Ireland Assurance gave us 2 buildings for nothing. 10 and 11, tragically, because the development of them was more expensive than disposing of them. And to develop them, they had to do so in order to get their planning permission because of the huge, massive development around the 3 streets that New Ireland Assurance had done. So I went to them with a colleague of mine and said, no cost to you, no cost to us, we'll take them from you. And so we got a license to develop them, and with kindness from the ministry particularly, and also from a few friends, we were able to get the first one done. And once we got the first one done, we were able to sell that on, and with the money from number 11 we put to number 10, and then number 10 into Angel Street, from Angel Street into this building. In fact, we bought it for 80,000 as a cleared site because it had a demolition order on it. So what we were doing was we were saving buildings which were part of the culture of the street, which to us were special and particular, and which weren't being replaced with the monotony of the big plastic metal window full of plate glass, of which last night I decided I'd go for a walk up through Thomas Street to see could I stop at one window, just as sort of an exercise. And I said that was the great Schlieffmoor into the city at one stage, was the hiving, thriving business street 30, 40 years ago. And there wasn't one window dressed. There wasn't one window that had a shutter. We have been involved in looking at that particular spine, the east-west spine, and particularly we did a very intensive study for Dublin City Council recently, looking at where the potential of that area, which is enormous, going right back to early Christian times, pre-Viking times, held all the great monasteries of the city at one stage, still is the most strongest in ecclesiastical architecture, has that lovely bend on it when you suddenly loom around it and you see St. Catherine's facing you, and then at the other end the church, Puget Augustinian Church. 2 incredible cathedrals. It goes on and on and on. And yet the great history of Dublin is totally immersed in it too, in the Liberties area. And yet there's nothing. And what we've got to do is 2 things. We've got to recognise the building stock. At least a half dozen wonderful Dutch buildings, gable-fronted buildings. And we have done architectural visualisation that Peter Keelan, an architect, did, which we'll have to show to you. I'll give you a copy of that study, in fact. Because with very little money, getting the revolving fund back, tiny money, 1 building is all we need, because then the money is always embedded in the last building, because it comes out of one, goes into the second, comes out of the second, goes into the third. It's the most economic thing you can do, and on top of that it engages at least 30 people per building, so you create employment, you create skills. And we had a very interesting lecture the other night from on the Morris Shaffrey Memorial Lecture from a Swedish architect, conservation architect, very well known, who worked for the World Bank and now works for ICMAS. He said during the Great Recession in Sweden about 20-25 years ago, he and a group of people sort of pushed the boat out against all the policy and said, we've got to take buildings we're going to lose. We've got to train young people in skills. And when the recession was over, it was one of the biggest contributions to the economy, because suddenly they were able to move in and do what they couldn't do if they hadn't been trained. And I think this is a time, because when we started in '92, it was exactly the same thing. We had our office on planks and 2 tarpaulins for 3 years. Terrific. And as you said, very wisely, Minister, what we have now is new currency. What I call the new currency is will. It's not money. Money won't do anything for you, because every time you turn on the news in the morning, Merkel or Sarkozy has told us it's gone. So what we have is will, and the will can do anything. And tonight to have people like Brian and Jamie and their colleagues, and Professor John Truby, who's been the great inspiration to them, a great teacher, and of course the wonderful modern architect, I can call it modern, has left us with his wife, Donington, who practiced terrific buildings. I think it's terrific for the Trust to share, because we're not just about conservation, we're not about old buildings, we're about the readability or the legibility of the city, and we're particularly about the particular and the special. And that's why I loved your intervention today in the paper. I had a second cup of coffee when I opened it and saw the two wonderful buildings in Blake's Cross, which I knew as a kid, because we used to live in Ennis, we were always being taken off that road to the Hinge. And I remembered those buildings and the lovely street in Ennis Diamond. And I thought, this is brilliant. The First Minister who spoke out and said, now hold back and give me justification. And you were great. You didn't say no, you said a justification. And I think it's what we need for everything is a justification. And just to conclude, a follow-up lecture the other night from a wonderful Italian, originally from Venice, living in Palermo, which the Line Forum had. And what I thought when he gave us 4 buildings that he had been involved in rescuing, some were combinations of buildings. But I came away from the lecture and I said to myself, what's the difference between the Italian and the Irish is that the Italians don't apologise for loving their culture. I said, why shouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? And he was looking at the pavement of the street and he was connecting the paving into the building and he was saying, but we have to look at this, what we were getting instead. The Irish are always apologising. So Minister, what we've got to start as of tonight, no longer apologies. Just cherish everything we have, and we have an incredible city and we have an incredible country, and my final word on it is, it can't be taken from us. They can take the Googles, they can take the Facebooks, they may be suddenly spirited away off down to Singapore or someplace tomorrow, but they can't take our culture, they can't take our married culture, our agriculture, our built natural environment. And that's the backbone of our economy for the future. And that's our greatest source. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to wait for that.
So, finally, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Brian Barber, who is one of the lead protagonists in this marvellous new exhibition.
Firstly, I'd like to thank Mr. Dinahan for being here tonight, and also Professor John Toomey for his constant support throughout this project. This project came from my final year thesis when I came in to talk to Geraldine about housing the Dublin Civic Trust in the new building. And they gave us the opportunity of this space and their support, so we really owed them a huge debt of gratitude for getting this to the stage that it is at now. Although I'm speaking here, I represent a group called Practice, and we're a design collective of very recent UCD graduates. The group is composed of 5 people: myself, Emily Conway, Dominic Lavelle, Joe Swan and Jamie Young. And we're all living in the city at present. We absolutely adore the city. We really wish to stay and to give something back to it. After Civic Trust offered us the space, we began to look at the city, and we really became interested in sites that while they lacked the value in the development sense, they offered opportunities for a typology that was aimed at the community, and each of these projects are really aimed at people working together for producing community centres and gardens and shared space at very low cost. Such as the site on Mead Street, which not only provides a community centre but also saves a building which is being to an extent ignored at the minute, and it's just disappearing away, which is the old St. Catherine's School. And also at Crampton Court, where we have designed an outdoor theatre space that is beside the Olympia and the Project Art Centre, and we believe that it is a viable project for the centre of Temple Bar and would be a magnificent tourist attraction. In all these projects we use scaffolding as the primary building material because of its ease of construction, its adaptability and its effectiveness. Obviously the lifespan of each project is different according to the site and the brief that we have associated with it. The exhibition represents a certain period in the life of the project, and we have plans for further development, publication come the new year, and a further exhibition next year. I I would really like to thank our sponsors, which are Chadwick's, which helped us with the scaffolding, and Dublin Business Society. And we really do owe a huge debt of gratitude for Dublin Civic Trust, who have helped us so much. Geraldine especially, you have helped us through every step of this project, and we really are thankful. When we started this project out a couple of months ago on kitchen table, which to last night was still covered in glue, we had no idea it would result in an exhibition this size, and thank you all for coming. Thank you. John, would you like to say a couple of words?
Thanks, Charlie. That was fantastic. I have to go, but I'd have to come back and talk to you.